The pick and roll in basketball is used by all of the NBA teams, professional basketball teams. Alex Arama, the director of development at the Cleveland Cavaliers, talks about it a lot. As a sports coach and sports scientist, I'm familiar with skill development and skill movement, but not basketball too well. Alex said in a recent podcast episode,
"We have to think as coaches, how can we design in affordances to the practice environment?"
But when I went looking into the pick and roll, this video shows a code step-by-step of instructions. What I want to do is understand these two different ideas a little bit better to see which one is more effective when it comes to coaching the pick and roll in basketball. But first, what is a pick and roll? It is a 2v2 sort of. As I have discussed before, I think labels are useful, but not necessarily accurate. One of the two attacking players has the ball, and then the other two are defenders. Here you can see you've got the 2v2, reject or use. Using the pick, you go the direction of the helping attacker. Rejecting the pick is going the opposite direction of the helper. Whether, when, or how you choose to do that is the expertise we're, as coaches, looking to develop. If one of the defenders get blocked, do you dribble? Do you pass? Do you shoot? What choice does the attacker make? But this is where this pick and roll situation is complex, because in a game, there's more than just the two of you, there's everyone else on the court. So the pick and roll is a 2v2 situation, which involves other people, so sort of a 2v2. Now, I think this is important because if you train a 2v2 and then one of your solutions for that situation in a game is blocked by a third player, well, now you may attack the 2v2 slightly differently, which makes the practice less relevant for the game scenario. But before we get to that, when you look at a 2v2, there are 4 main options: dribble left, dribble right, pass, or shoot. And that is actually the code decision tree that was shown in the video. If neither defender blocks you, you shoot for the 3. If either defender comes to get the ball, you go the other way. So if the left defender tries to get the ball, you go right. If the right defender comes to get the ball, you go left, because now it's a 2v1. If both defenders try to win the ball or try to block the shot, you make the pass, because now it's a 1-on-0 to the hoop. However, there are lots of other factors that can change the way and the reason people make decisions, which is what I think Alex is talking about in this podcast.
We have to think as coaches, how can we design in affordances to the practice environment?
Now, I don't totally understand the way that sentence was structured, because affordances are perceived. We all perceive affordances, or opportunities for behavior, whether, when, and how to act. So I wouldn't say we design in affordances into the practice, because affordances will emerge with action, because perception and action are coupled. But we still certainly need to consider the affordances perceived. So if neither defender comes to block for the 3, there is an opportunity to shoot for the 3 points, a perceived affordance. However, each individual will perceive whether they shoot, when they shoot, and how they shoot differently. Maybe if the person doesn't think they can shoot for the 3 for some other reason, they might not shoot. Why they don't shoot will relate to the information that they are using to make the decision. Maybe they think they're too far away, or one of the defenders is too close and will block the shot, or something got in their eye, or maybe there is a social factor that could be impacting their ability to shoot, like fear of missing. That is why the practice design may need to change to help the individual choose to shoot for the 3. Instead of giving all the other options as well, maybe simplify the task, so use task simplification, or changing the problem, changing the culture, the environment, changing something about the situation. Which is where, if we take this view, the code explanation is oversimplified. If neither defender blocks the shot, and the player with the ball perceives an opportunity to drive to the hoop for an easy 2, maybe they do that instead. Which is where the coach's practice design impacts the way the players solve the problems. Treating people and skilled movement like robots can lead to people struggling to problem solve on their own. Must shoot the 3 if the defenders don't come and block? Well, if you're not very successful, that could become an issue with your team and your coaches if they don't really want you missing loads of 3-point shots. Some teams even use this as a tactic. I saw when I was watching the Paralympic basketball, the 3-point shooters that had high success ratios were closed down quickly, whereas others were left to shoot. It was almost like a shoot if you think you can scenario. Rob Gray has written a couple of books about learning how to move and skilled movement, and Alex actually uses one of his quotes in the podcast saying, "Effective coaching is all about manipulating affordances, changing the invitations an athlete receives from the environment." And this is where all those other opportunities for behavior can be highlighted or dimmed by the practice design. As I mentioned earlier, the pick and roll is a 2v2 sort of, because it involves other players. My guess is that a successful pick and roll leads to points. But this is where I see a potential problem with 2v2 pick and roll practice. Here we have a situation. We've got the pick and roll. We've got a 2v2. The attacker has the ball, and then we've got the two defenders. The left defender goes to the ball, the attacker drives right, but then needs to pass because someone else blocks it. In a 2v2 situation in practice, the attacker still might not be able to get the shot off because the defender's done well, but it may open an opportunity for someone else. As you saw in that example, the attack looked dangerous enough to convince another defender to leave their man, leaving them open for a pass. So if the attacker sees the opportunity and passes to the player, now you've found success. But the 2v2 situation would have been a fail because the attacker didn't get the points, someone else did. And that's where the 2v2 isn't quite representative of a full game attack. But saying full team attack is very, very broad. And this is where a lot of the sport-specific jargon comes into coaching and skill development, which I think can be unnecessary. Pick and roll, switch, dominoes. I'm personally not a fan of the labels because often the meanings are different between individuals, which adds unnecessary confusion. Instead, when I coach, I describe behaviors. I coach trampoline, but in this situation, I would ask the attacker, what would you do if a different defender came to block you? That doesn't necessarily need to be the one that was marking the other player in that 2v2 of the pick and roll and the switch. It could be anyone, especially when considering novice individuals. It could be someone from the other side of the court that perceives an opportunity to steal the ball. In handball, a sport I'm very familiar with and have played a lot, there are a lot of attacking crosses, but the defenders stand relatively still, almost like a zonal defense. So do basketball players know how to attack if the players stand still, or if the players are constantly swapping or moving around? The defense is drastically different, so saying pick and roll and switch constrains that quite a lot with the language used, and so the meanings can get confusing. How would a basketball team attack if the defenders didn't move that much? There would still be a 2v2-like situation at the front of the key or just in front of the hoop, but the movement will be different from the attackers and defenders. On the other hand, if we look at this example, this is less of an organised attack and more of a counter-attack. Now again, I don't coach basketball, but if I look at this, I don't see an obvious 2v2, and if anyone's making mistakes, it's the two defenders at the back left and the back middle, because the back left has gone towards the ball, and the middle wasn't even looking at the ball or the other attacking player. So when you continue through, he's just left free in the middle. So who would be the second defender, the one on the left or the one in the middle? Both of which now look silly because the player can just go straight through and score. These game-like situations don't appear in the scripted practice that I tend to see. I was watching a local basketball team, and the local coach said, so in a real game, you won't get that sort of chance. I want to emphasize, I'm not saying scripted practice is bad or wrong, but I think it's often less effective if it's highly constrained and less representative of game-like situations. Which begs the question, how would you adjust players' behaviors or players' solutions to problems if you don't think that what they're doing is going to work in the game, but it's working in practice? And what Adam describes there is the constraints-led approach to coaching, creating problems for individuals to solve, which encourages the desired behaviors that you want the players and individuals to do. Not telling them whether, when, and how to act, like the code example, but letting them develop the skill to make the decision themselves. Self-organization or problem solving. But again, for this to be effective, there needs to be consequences in the problem, in the practice design, which again is where the code example can be useful, but not always accurate or effective when used for coaching. As I mentioned earlier, if the two defenders move away or don't go and block the shot, the player could just drive straight through and go up for an easy two. Why would they make that change if there's no consequence in the problem scenario that's been set. Sport, skilled movement, and expertise is all really shown in the way individuals can solve problems dynamically in various situations. The challenge in coaching is that problems are perceived different depending on the level of expertise, action capabilities, and various other non-linear, non-obvious multi-causality factors that impact a player's decision-making. The Fosbury flop or Brill bend in high jump emerged because the problem shifted, allowing for alternative solutions, which was creative, for the time at least. In dynamic sports like basketball, the problems are dynamic, ever-changing throughout the game, throughout the practice. For me, this suggests answers or the right solution isn't the most effective way to coach attacking situations in basketball. Using various practice designs when attacking in basketball using constraints to encourage certain movement solutions. When it comes to warming up in basketball, I would use the same kind of philosophy, built from ecological dynamics and the constraints-led approach to coaching. I discuss this more in a video about the best warm-ups for basketball, which you can see over there.